Good morning. It's always a treat to be in Dare County. Love being up here, and I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. Today we're going to be talking about trends in recreational surf fishing on the northern Outer Banks. And so we're going to explore how the Division of Marine Fisheries collects recreational fishing data and how we produce catch estimates. We're going to talk a little bit about how it's incorporated into management, and then we're going to explore trends in the data that are specific to surf fishing here on the northern Outer Banks. So again, my name is Cathey. I'm a data analyst with the division. I work in the license and statistics section, and our work group focuses on recreational fisheries data collection. Recreational saltwater fishing is extremely popular in North Carolina. Every year, we have over 1 million licensed anglers taking anywhere between 15 and 20 million trips. So it's an extremely popular pastime. There are so many people participating that it's physically impossible for us to interview everybody and create a census of what's being collected, so we have to conduct surveys and produce estimates. So to be able to produce an estimate of recreational fishing catch, you need two pieces of information. The first piece of information you're going to need is an estimate of effort. And so that's going to be the number of trips taken in a particular year. And this can be accomplished either through mail surveys or telephone surveys. The second piece of information you're going to need is the catch rate, and that's going to be the average number of fish caught per trip. So you take your total number of trips, you multiply it by the average number of fish caught per trip, and this gives you an estimate of the total number of fish caught. Importantly, since it is an estimate, there's a measure of precision associated with it, and so the greater the precision, the more likely the estimate is to be reflective of what's actually going on in the real world. North Carolina has a variety of recreational data collection programs. We have about 9 in total. Today we're going to be talking about the Marine Recreational Information Program. That's a partnership between the Division of Marine Fisheries and NOAA Fisheries, and we've been collaborating since 1981, and it's by far our largest data collection program. So the effort component of MRIP comes from the Fishing Effort Survey. This is going to be a mail survey that's sent out every 2 months to approximately 1,300 people. It's sent out as a weather and outdoor activity survey, and this is to reduce bias from having just a fishing-specific survey. We used to do a telephone survey to try to get this effort piece, but as time went on, landlines were phased out. We were having a real tough time getting in touch with people, so we had to adopt this mail survey, and it's been in effect since 2018. So that's how we get our effort component. Our catch rate comes from an access point angler intercept survey, and so we have a field staff of about 20 creel clerks, and we send them randomly to one of 300 sites throughout the coast. The map on the left just kind of gives you a ballpark of the number of sites that we visit in a particular area. And so we send them to places like boat ramps, marinas, piers, various beach accesses, and they'll interview people coming off the water, ask them, where'd you go, what'd you catch, what were you trying to catch? We ask them what they kept, what they threw back, and if they had anything they harvested, we see if we can weigh and measure it, so we actually collect biological data from them as well. So again, that's going to be our catch rate piece. So we get our effort from our mail survey, we get our catch rate from our intercept survey, we multiply them together, and we get an estimate of total catch. And North Carolina is extremely proactive with our angler intercept surveys. We typically interview between 15 and 20,000 people a year. South Carolina does about 3,000 by comparison, so we are extremely proactive in North Carolina. One of the really cool things about this data collection program is that the data is all publicly available. If you go to Google and put in MRIP data query, it'll spit you to these screens here, and so you can explore trends in effort as well as catch. For a variety of species, you can look at North Carolina, multiple states, all states on the East Coast and the Gulf participate in MRIP with the exception of Louisiana and Texas. So it's really neat, and I highly encourage you to go play with this data. The example I have here is going to be southern flounder from 2016 and 2017, and it's broken out by fishing mode, whether it be shore fishing, charter boat, or private boat. And one of the things you can see here is that private rental boats make up the bulk of southern flounder catch in North Carolina. As I mentioned earlier, there's a measure of precision associated with these estimates, and that's going to be our PSE column here. That's going to be a proportional standard error. And so the smaller the PSE, the more realistic the estimate is. And so the general rule of thumb for fisheries management is that a PSE of less than 20 is pretty robust, and it can be incorporated. And once you start getting over 50, that's where you really got to start taking it with a grain of salt. and it flags everything. All the outputs flagged. So you see we got our 50.5 there, so literally red flag. So anyway, I highly encourage you to check this out. It's really neat. Okay, so once we have our estimates of catch, how is this incorporated into management? So we develop stock assessment models, and so stock assessment models provide us with a couple pieces of information. They actually let us establish the standing stock biomass, how many fish are there, and then it also allows us to establish the exploitation rate, so it's if overfishing is occurring. So recreational fisheries data feeds into the catch component. That's going to be the total removals from a fish population, whether it's by recreational or commercial fisheries. And then we also contribute to the biological information, life history, things like growth, mortality, reproduction, and then abundance is accomplished through fisheries independent data collection programs. And so these models inform fisheries management plans. The couple of examples I have here, we have southern flounder, which is going to be a state-managed species, and then we also contribute to federally managed species. And the example I have here is going to be the snapper grouper complex in the South Atlantic. Okay, so that's all the catch estimates and surveys and kind of the boring, nerdy stuff. Now let's talk about some of this data as it specifically relates to shore fishing here on the northern Outer Banks. And that's going to be basically from where we're standing now to the Virginia line. Okay, so what do people target? We have a list of our top 10 primary targets here. It looks like red drum is king, followed by bluefish, and then you have kingfish, spotted sea trout, flounder, spot, mackerel, cobia, and then finally striped bass is going to round out the top 10. And now we're going to talk a little bit about effort as well as catch associated with red drum, bluefish, and switched kingfish and spotted sea trout, even though I've got nothing but love in my heart for whiting. We'll talk about trout today. So this is going to be trips targeting red drum from 2010 through 2018. Again, this is going to be shore fishing on the northern Outer Banks. You can see it's variable from year to year. It looks like there's been a little uptick the last 3 years. And if we look at this seasonally, what you can see is that it looks like fishing efforts highly concentrated in the fall and into the winter, relatively stable through January and February, and then starts to taper off through the spring and into the summer. So this is going to be the number in pounds of red drum caught through time. Again, it's going to be 2010 through 2018. The green line is going to be the number of fish harvested, and the blue dashed line is going to be pounds. And so the number of red drum harvested over this time series is somewhat stable. A couple of things that really stand out to me is going to be 2013 and 2017. You look at how high the pounds are relative to the number of fish, and it looks like you were getting some really nice red drum up here those years. They were about 5 pounds apiece in 2013 and a little over 3 in 2017. Then if we look at the seasonal trends in catch for numbers in pounds, you can see that it really closely mirrors the effort. You really see this uptick in September and October through the winter, and then that subsequent decline through the spring and into the summer. The current status of red drum. So the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission completed a stock assessment in 2017 and found that overfishing is not occurring, and the management targets do continue to be met. The size of the stock, whether it's overfished or not, continues to be unknown, and this is due to limited data available for the adult population. And our drum biologist, Lee Paramore, he's actually based out of the Manio office up here. I have his contact information, so feel free to reach out to Lee if you have any questions about red drum that I'm unable to answer. Okay, so now we'll move on to bluefish. Again, this is going to be the number of trips targeting bluefish from 2010 through 2018. It looks like there was a little dip in 2012, 13, and 14, and then it started to pick back up through 2016, and then it's a little bit of decline through 2018. When we look at the seasonal number of trips targeting bluefish, we can see that it picks up in May and June, dips a little bit in July and August, and then shoots back up in the fall. That's going to be due to the highly migratory nature of bluefish. They migrate up the coast during the spring, and then they come back down in the fall. We look at the number in pounds of bluefish through time. You can see that numbers in pounds are tracking pretty well through about 2014. All these fish are about a pound apiece. What's really interesting about this figure is that in 2017, you see that big uptick in pounds, so it looks like y'all had a pretty good year for chopper blues in 2017. Now we'll look at the seasonal component. Again, very similarly to red drum, this tracks very well with effort. You see this uptick in the spring, dips a little bit through July and August, and then increases again in the fall. And the current status of bluefish. 2019 benchmark indicated that bluefish stock are overfished, but they're not subject to overfishing. And then Jason Rock will be our bluefish biologist. And then last but not least, we'll talk a little bit about spotted sea trout. This is going to be trips targeting spotted sea trout through time. It's variable from year to year. But like bluefish and red drum, it seems like there's been a uptick the last few years, dropped a little bit in 2018. This is going to be the seasonal distribution of spotted sea trout trips. Highly concentrated during the winter, starts to pick up in September, October, real strong in November and December, pretty good through February, and then declining through the spring and summer. This is going to be the number in pounds of sea trout harvested through time. Similarly to red drum, you have a couple of years, 2017 and 2012, where you're catching some really large spotted sea trout. And when you look at the seasonal distribution, you can see it increase through the winter. And good news with spotted sea trout, actually meant to fix this slide. It should be 2014 instead of 2012. Sea trout is not overfished, and overfishing is not occurring. And we're currently doing a stock assessment on sea trout this year. And Tracy Bauer is our sea trout biologist. So as I was looking over this data, y'all got one of those good problems up here. You got something to fish for year-round in the surf. So you get your bluefish in the spring, summer, and fall, and then the winter, you go get your trout and drum. So thank you so much for having me. It's always a treat to be in Dare County, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.